Welcome to the Diversity Connector podcast, where we explore the rich tapestry of human experiences. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, and together as we dive into conversations that bridge cultures, challenge stereotypes, and celebrate the unique perspectives each of us brings to the table. Each episode is a journey through stories and insights from a kaleidoscope of voices, each sharing their colorful narrative. Whether you're at home, on the go, or just anywhere in between, you're now part of a community that values understanding, inclusivity, and the beauty of diversity. So plug in your headphones, get comfortable, and let's connect through the power of our shared stories. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Diversity Connector podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Diversity Connector. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And as you know, the Diversity Connector is connecting people from all over the world to talk about their personal stories, to share their aspects and the things that they understand the value of diversity to be. So today I am blessed with the presence of yet another amazing guest. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. Good morning from wonderful Copenhagen. My name is Phaedria Marie St. Hilaire, and I'm based in Copenhagen, but I'm originally from the nature island of the Caribbean, Dominica. So, what do? I've been asked that question many times lately, and the answer is a little bit challenging for me because I do many things. And I've learned the word now. I have what they call a portfolio career. But the red thread is that I want to spend my time on this earth making a difference and impacting as many people as I can. And so I do that by working with diversity and inclusion. I'm a speaker, a workshop facilitator. I am an executive coach, so I work with people one-on-one to help them fulfill their potential. And I am a business angel investor where I focus on investing in women-owned businesses or businesses where the founders are people of color. I want to give up underrepresented groups a platform, a voice, and to help us extend our influence and impact in the world. So what brought me to this stage? I am actually a scientist, or I was trained as a scientist. Have a PhD in chemistry from Duke University in the US. And you might wonder, how does a scientist be an executive coach, a board member, an angel investor? But one of the moments that really stuck with me was about 3 years ago when I was in a meeting with my leadership team. I worked for a huge pharmaceutical company at the time. And the SVP was in the meeting and he was explaining why someone was promoted because it was a domino effect. And he was expressing some sort of dissatisfaction with one of the persons who had resigned. And he expressed, how difficult can it be? Even a Negro could do it better. And I'm sitting in this room. I'm the only person of color in this room. And I'm wondering what the hell is happening. And I looked around and we were 7 people in this room, and everybody had just had their head down, looking at the desk, not saying anything. I actually tried to gaslight myself by saying, no, this was not what I heard. This could not have been said. And so I didn't say anything. However, at the end of the meeting, 2 of the actually the two men in the room, it was the majority women in the room, but two men came up to me and apologized on behalf of the SVP, Senior Vice President. And that's when I realized that, yes, you did hear what you heard, and I shouldn't try to gaslight myself. And I really struggled with how to handle this situation. What should I do? Because I decided I would not say anything while in the room. And so I went home. I spoke to my husband about it, and you know, the advice was, oh, don't make any waves. He doesn't really mean it. He's just clumsy. He's just awkward. Talking about the SVP, and so I should just not say anything. Just go about my business and continue to do the work that I did. Yeah, I will add that the SVP and I, we did have a good relationship. I felt that he respected me and he acknowledged the great work that I was doing at the company. Um, but it didn't sit right with me, and I spoke to my other friends. And then, just an aside, at the time, I had established an organization called Professional Women of Color. And the purpose of the organization is to empower women of color in Denmark to fulfill their personal goals, to increase the visibility and impact. So we work with the women, but we also work with the ecosystem in diversity and inclusion. So I had many friends in that organization, and I asked them, and one of my friends said to me, well, what advice would you have given to one of the women that you mentor if she had come to you with this issue? And that's when it really hit me. And then the second thing was that I was speaking with my husband again, and our son was sitting at the table. And then I asked myself, what example am I going to set for myself, for my son? So I decided that I would talk to the SVP about it. And of course, I was completely gaslighted. He denied saying that at all. And to cut a long story short, it ended up with him not speaking to me, not acknowledging me. I could see that my time at the organization or in that area was numbered. So I started looking for other positions. But before I could find other positions, there was a reorg, and my position, surprise, surprise, was cut. It was a hard lesson for me to learn, but what I really discovered is that I need to step into my own. I need to live out my purpose. And if my purpose is to be a voice for people of color, if my purpose is to make change, that I really need to step up and, be my own and be very open about my support for people of color. So that was a transition point for me. Of course, it wasn't just, easy from one day to the other. I went through identity crisis. I spent 2 weeks being depressed on my sofa. But I am very fortunate that I had the resources. I had what I call my personal advisory board, people around me who would support me. And I also had the most amazing career coach. I also took it as how should I say, as an opportunity to reflect on my life and how I can live a life that is more true to the purpose as I saw it for myself. So yes, I did apply for other corporate jobs, for other director and vice president positions. I went to the interviews, but at some point I found myself sitting in an interview, having this out of body experience, just looking at myself, hearing myself saying the things that, are the perfect answers, but my stomach and my heart was not in it. So I made the decision, well, I'm not going to look for corporate anymore, and I will just put myself 100% into the nonprofit Professional Women of Color that I had co-founded some years ago. But I firmly believe the universe gives you what you need when you need it. And through serendipity, I found a position where they actually required a consultant. And this led me to establish my own consulting company where I consult within pharma, as well as I use it as a platform for executive coaching. because this was one of the things that I also used in the time that after I was fired. I went back to school. I trained as an executive coach, and I also trained to be certified on the boards of different organizations. And it was through this certification process to be on a board that I was introduced or reintroduced into the investor space. I thought at first I thought that someone like me, who is not rich, who has not made many companies and sold them and be very profitable, could not be an investor. But one of the things that I learned is that there are many ways that you can support the fantastic young entrepreneurs out there. Of course, you can provide funding, but you can also provide the competencies that you have. And I've had like 2 decades of experience from working in startups, but also working with biotech startups and the corporate world. So through a combination of working with no, so what I used my competencies as well as some of the money that I had saved up to invest in different startups. And it was a huge learning curve for me. I always say finance was never my strong point, but one of the things that I found out is it is always good to start in a group. So I do investments in syndicates. I joined 2 different investment clubs who provide a platform for learning where I really had a lot of support and help to learn the tricks of the trade and have people who were more experienced that I could discuss with, and they could help me do the evaluations that I needed. Of course, I'm still learning, and it's a journey, but I am extremely happy that I'm able to give back and make a difference. Two of the companies that I'm one of the companies that I have invested in. It's actually a company that provides education to women about our reproductive fragility, something I think that is really needed. Often as women, we are told that we can have everything. I think we can have everything, but not all at the same time. And we need to prioritize, we need to make choices, we need to focus on what we want. And the perception that you can have a kid if you want at any time, it's just completely false. It's a false narrative. And so I'm very happy to support a company that educates women about their reproductive, like our reproductive fragility, but at the same time, it provides services such as egg freezing and fertility treatment. What else, Atkins, can I say? Gertrude?
Absolutely wonderful. Now, let me take you back a few steps. I'm always fascinated when I talk to people of African descent and the African diaspora, how we have found ourselves in different parts of the world. You are in Denmark and from the Dominican Republic originally. I'm from Zimbabwe, living in Australia. Let's talk about the journey that got you
Mhm.
to Denmark in the first place. Let's just go back a step and hear a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as I mentioned, I was born in Dominica. It's a very small island. My parents, both of them, were teachers. My father was the principal of the elementary school, and my mother taught home economics. And I mentioned this because through my parents, they emphasized the importance of education, and that the way out, the way to develop yourself, the way to have an impact, is to be educated. The other reason I mention this is important is because my mother was one of the few women who worked. So already, right from the time I was little, I had this role model that women can contribute, and women are sort of equal to men. I have four siblings, 2 boys and 2 girls, and I can definitely remember my mother asking my brothers to do the laundry, to cook the food. So I also grew up believing that, there's no such thing as women's work or men's work. And at the time growing up, I didn't realize how unusual that was. And that has been with me throughout my life, working towards female empowerment. So, with the great focus on education, I was, of course, the studious, the quiet girl in the school who got good grades. I went to an all girls Catholic high school. Again, that was another experience that made me recognize that women can be leaders, because we were all girls and we did everything. Right, we did sports, we did the leadership. We had volunteer events. I mean, it's very empowering to grow up in an environment where you do not feel that you are less than because of your sex, and the color of your skin. Of course, there was the socioeconomic classism, and there was some colorism growing up. But I focused on my studies, because one of the things I used to dream about is being actually a pilot. In the Caribbean, most of the houses have ocean view. It's a very mountainous island, and so most of the homes, they are close to the beach. So I would spend lots of evenings looking at the setting sun, wondering, okay, what's out there. And I knew that at some point I needed to leave Dominica to explore, to find out what else was there in the world. The other thing that was key was that I was very curious about nature, looking up at the stars, experiencing, being alive. I was very curious about biology and chemistry, and that's what led me to study chemistry. I studied chemistry up to A levels. And then after that, I got a scholarship to study at the University of South Carolina, where I majored in chemistry. And after 4 years, there's always a discussion. What should I do? Should I go back to my country? How can I develop my country? Or should I go on? And it was a big struggle. At the time, my parents expected me to be a medical doctor in the Caribbean. And I think that goes for much of the global South. The only recognized how do you call that? The recognized professions are doctor, lawyer, and engineer. And I found through my studies, this deep curiosity I had was not going to be satisfied by being a doctor or an engineer. And I started doing undergraduate research, and I was really hooked on doing research. Um, I studied at the University of South Carolina, which is in the southern US. And that's where I started realizing that the color of my skin could be a hindrance. I remember when we had to do the chemistry labs, most of the other students did not want to work with me because they thought I was there on a basketball scholarship. You can't really see it, but I am tall, and that I wasn't very smart. And so it was quite funny in the chemistry, and I mean that ironically, but in the chemistry lab, there was a woman who was a mixed Japanese and white parentage. And then there was a foreign student from Germany who had, how you could say, one of his arms was not fully developed. So the three of us formed the motley crew, and we were the lab group because we were excluded by everybody else. And they were wrong because we aced the class. And when we went to the second term and we had to do the second set of labs, then suddenly they wanted to work with us. But we're like, no, it's okay. So this is some of studying in the Southern US was really an eye opener that people of color in other parts of the world face many challenges and are discriminated against. And being a woman of color, a foreigner, and also, yeah, a woman, a person of color, and a foreigner, Because of this intersectionality, I was able to participate in many different groups, like the Black students groups or women in chemistry, women in science, where I felt that I had to, do something to improve the situation for the students. So that was my undergrad experience. And then going back to the decision whether I should go back to my country or whether I should stay, I decided to further my studies because I really, really loved doing research. And I had explored some opportunities or what opportunities were available to me if I had gone back to my home country. And quite frankly, the opportunities that were available to me were to teach high school or at A levels. And at the time, I thought that this was not what I wanted to do. And then the second argument is that if I further develop myself, then I can have a greater impact because I will be more developed. So I again applied for scholarships, and then I got a scholarship to go to Duke University for graduate school. Again, studying chemistry, again, facing the very subtle microaggressions. But again, my focus is to do the best that I can do. And I was fortunate to have a fantastic supervisor, and we still keep in touch. We're still friends to this day. And he was a young professor and not an American, a Canadian, and he was very, instrumental in helping me to do the best that I can be. Because sometimes as a female, you doubt yourself a lot, or you want to be perfect. At least I know I want to be perfect. If I can't do something 200%, then it's like, maybe not. Um, but he was very instrumental in building my self-confidence. I had someone who believed in me and what I could do. And again, at the end of my PhD studies, there was the decision point, what do I do? And at the time, I was, how should I say? I was a little bit tired of living in the US and being boxed. You're a person of color, and these are the expectations that you have to be a certain way. And I was curious to see what it would be like to be a person of color outside of the US. And I saw opportunities in Denmark. The area of chemistry that I specialized in, there was a lab in Denmark that was at the forefront of it. It was within combinatorial chemistry. And there was a PhD, there was a professor at Duke University. He was from Jamaica. He was the only Black professor at the university. And he had ties to the lab in Denmark. And he put in a good word for me. And so I got in at Carlsberg. And again, it as I mentioned this, it's one of the, like I say, important lessons. I feel like I've been very privileged and very lucky to have people who believe in me and who have supported my career. And so it's very important that you build those relationships, you seek out those mentors, you find the people who are willing to not just mentor you, but also to sponsor you. And also the flip side is you have to give back. You also have to do the same so that we can achieve critical mass and have people of color in positions where the decisions are being made, in positions of power.
So let's talk a little bit about sponsorship and allyship in DEI. Just so that our listeners who might not be aware of what these terms mean, why is it important for people who have the privilege to sponsor or become an ally or a mentor for people of color within their organizations?
I mean, I've been fortunate to, I could say, be at the table and hear some of the discussions that go on. I've been on committees that recruit, or select the talent within the organizations, the people who will be put on the fast track to become, vice presidents or directors and so on. And when I reflect on the conversations, or how these selections are made, there's a
We
lot
seem to be having a
done.
problem with our connection. I'm
Oh,
not sure if
I
that's on your side or mine.
I can hear you. I'm sorry. Can you hear me? Um, can you hear me? I cannot hear you. You're frozen.
Can you see me now?
Yes, I can, and I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, you dropped off completely there, and I wasn't sure if the connection was on your side or mine. So
I'll
you
take it from
talked
the top
about being
again.
having, yeah,
Yeah.
just
So, as I said, I've been privileged to have had a seat at the table and been in the room where talent is selected. And there's a lot done about establishing objective criteria, but often after the candidates are assessed because of the objective criteria, I hear my colleagues talk about the X factor or the six factor, just something, my gut feeling. And at the end of the day, the people who are selected are always the extroverts, the attractive people, the people who have a relationship with the selectors. And so I think if you are a person of color, or a person, maybe even an introvert, and you don't have somebody to speak up for you in those rooms, then two things happen. One, you will never be selected. And two, the leadership is not going to be diverse because the same kinds of people are selected over and over again. So it's important that as you mentor diverse people and you sponsor them. I mean, mentoring, it's, giving them the, sharing your life story, inspiring them, helping them understand how to navigate the system. But sponsoring is the really key things where when they're not in the room, you speak their name, you put them forward because you believe and you know what they're capable of, even if they don't, look like what you would expect. So
yes.
it's a way. At the end of the day, it benefits the company because several studies have shown that the more diverse teams are, especially diverse on the basis of ethnicity and nationality, not so much gender. The more diverse these teams are, the better the more innovative products you get, and the better it is for the company's bottom line.
Yes, that is so true. Wow. Now let's talk about your perfectionism and how it has helped you get to where you are, but how it can also hinder you from getting to where you are. Um, Confessions of a Recovering Perfectionist. Amazing title for this podcast. Tell me a little bit about how that plays out in your life.
um, Emphasis is on recovering. And as I said, okay, you may not know this, but when you said, let's have a podcast tomorrow or in 2 days, the first, my instinct was like, oh my God, no, I can't do this. I'm not ready. I need to write out and have my story and have my words perfect, to be able to articulate it. And then I had to say, okay, come on, calm down. So, it's something that I've had since I was a child. I brought Ace home, and I'm not blaming anybody, but the one time I came home with a C, it was like, you can do better. What's this? Why are you bringing a C, right? And so whenever I remember distinctly, there was once where I had to, there was a spelling competition, and I was one of those selected. And in the practice, there were a couple words that I missed. And then I'm like, oh my God, no, 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 I can't do this. I can't do this. So then I went up and I'm like, I'm not taking part in this competition anymore. I really can't do this. I came up with some kind of excuse. And for me, that's a missed opportunity. For one, it could have been a way of, building my confidence, but also, even if I failed, then it would have been a way of getting me out of the perfectionist trap. I remember when my son was born, I had to be, the perfect mother, and bake cakes from scratch for his school. It had to be the best possible cake, and I was just, running myself tired, because I'm trying to do so many things to have this image of, the career woman, the best girlfriend, the best mother, and okay, maybe not so much best wife. Something had to go. But I ended up not having enough sleep and being tired all the time, and then it's like a vicious circle, because when I'm tired all the time, then I cannot do my best work, and I'm thinking, okay, this is not good enough, so I'm not going to try it, or if I'm interested in something else and I have to reach out to somebody, I have to have the perfect, opening sentence, I have to write the perfect email, and sometimes I did not do those things because I thought it wasn't good enough, or I didn't think that I had the right approach or the right angle. I had to learn the 80-20 rule, and what you see is what you get, and also have a belief that people, like most people, are kind, and they will help you make something better, instead of serving this thing that's very perfect. But it was a long road, and I still struggle with it. I use, like, time. I said, okay, I'm only going to work on this thing for 2 hours, and then that's it, and then I have to let it go. I'm not going to die if it's not perfect.
I love it. I love it. No, it's great to try and strive for perfection, but it can hamper you and hold you back in many ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
because sorry to interrupt, but interestingly, one of the things that people always say is like, recently, oh my God, you're doing so many things. How do you have time to do so many things? And, upon reflection, I had to let go of perfect. Because if
yes,
I had only could do things that were perfect, then there are many things that I would not do, because I'd be spending so much time perfecting it.
yes.
So it frees up your time, and it gives you more opportunities to make an impact.
I love that. I love it. Let's finish off with your Women of Color organization.
Mhm.
I've got your website scrolling at the bottom of the screen in case there's any women out there. Are you only targeting women in Denmark? Is this a global organization? How can people participate?
Okay, so the organization was started in 2019 by my co-founder, Selim Ablo Nielsen. She had the idea that we need to do something because we'd both lived in Denmark for many years, and the narrative around people of color was not the best. And we both had children. We are both married to Danish men, but we felt that there were not sufficient role models. We looked around, we didn't see women of color. And even in the companies, very often we were the only one. And the career trajectory of women of color in Denmark, it's very flat. Other women, their career trajectory goes up. And because of these reasons, we would, hang out and talk about this, and would say somebody needs to do something about it. But finally it dawned on Selim that somebody was her, and she took me along for the ride, and we co-founded this organization. And the main purpose is to increase the visibility and impact of women of color. And we have 4 pillars. The first one is community. We help women connect and build a professional network. Um, I now know that there are thousands of women of color. If you'd asked me 5 years ago, today there were a couple hundreds. And there are so many of us in the corporate space, in small companies, with our own businesses, as entrepreneurs, as artists, doing a lot of great work, but we don't know each other, and we struggle with some of the similar issues. So the one of the pillars of ProWalk is to build a community. And in that community, we share our stories, we inspire each other, we support each other, but we also share our connections.
Yes.
Yes. The second part is we have an educational program where we have different master classes, because we have to develop ourselves to be able to capitalize on the opportunities when they arise. So we have master classes about interviewing skills, CVs, negotiating your salary, but also finding your purpose. And we have a wellness program now, because being a minority in this space can be taxing on your mental health. So we do have events that focus on mental health. Then
Fantastic.
the third is the visibility part. We have a monthly magazine, an electronic magazine called Pro Celebrate, where we celebrate and we introduce women of color in our community and what they're doing. But we also participate, and that ties into the second part, which is working on the ecosystem, working with diversity and inclusion, where we participate in panel discussions, in conferences, where we tell our stories, we talk about inclusion and diversity, and we also hold workshops with different companies, and we write articles in newspapers. So it's a mix of, the group, the individual, and then the ecosystem.
Fantastic. Oh, this is so inspiring. It's so nice to know that there's other women of color organizations out there. And I think you're right that our power as women lies in collaborating and the sharing of
Absolutely.
resources.
Yeah, I remember seeing this quote that's aimed as men, where they say, it's not a pie, so because you give women more space doesn't mean you're going to get less. And I think the same applies to women. Women are, as I say, wonderfully diverse. And just because one group is going to get more doesn't mean that you're going to get less. We have
Yes,
to collaborate and grow and make the pie bigger together, because there's enough for all of us.
there is enough to go around. A beautiful way to end our segment. Thank you so much for coming online today and sharing with us. It's an
Thank
absolute
you for the invitation.
to be able to interview somebody who's sitting in Denmark who has such a fascinating story. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. In case you are out there in Europe looking for other women of color to connect with, or anywhere else in the world, the website is scrolling at the bottom of the screen. Tune in again tomorrow when I interview another interesting guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And bye for now. Thanks again for the interview.
Okay, thank you for having me. Bye bye.
And that's a wrap, everybody, on today's episode of the Diversity Connector podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our vibrant and global conversation. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a tapestry of diverse perspectives. Remember, every story you've heard today is a thread in the larger fabric of our shared humanity. So, as you step back into your world, carry these stories with you and let them inspire you to embrace and celebrate the rich diversity around us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these inspiring stories with more listeners. Do follow us on social media by looking for the Diversity Connector podcast for more updates. Until then, keep connecting, keep listening, and keep celebrating the beauty of diversity. This is the Diversity Connector podcast signing off. Stay curious, stay open, and definitely stay connected.